All right, everyone, I didn't pay enough attention to the span system, the span panel, the panel replacement that I did. And so the guys from Span, Mike, reached out to me and said, hey, let's make a better video of sharing what this thing is and why you may want it in your house. And a little video I made, I just kind of fumbling through the app. So what I wanted to do today was get into a little more detail on if you were to do something like this. I think it's really, really cool. It's like completely changed the feel and the cleanliness of my garage, and most of us have this big ugly panel like right in the middle. Yeah. Actually, the last house, I moved the panel because it was right in the middle of the back wall, and so a lot of times you buy a home that exists and you get this big ugly stupid thing, and so for me, it seems a bit superficial here, been ridiculous, but I spent the $3,750 on it just so I didn't have to look at a regular Square D box or GE
Understand?
box.
Yeah. So
give us the background. Like, how did this come about? When did Span start? I mean, was this like a venture capital? Like, how did the company start? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so our CEO and founder, Arch Rao, was the head of energy products at Tesla. They're creating these really cool products, and he saw how the world is kind of going towards electrification of everything, going away from fossil fuels, decarbonization, and everything, all this cool technology being put out there is all landing in what you said, the traditional kind of dumb electrical panel.
Yeah.
So aside from the aesthetic aspect that a lot of people do like the way Span looks in comparison to traditional electrical panels, there's a lot of really neat features in it. So if you look at Span as a company, our mission is enabling electrification for everybody. Okay. So we're trying to bring renewable energy sources to homes in a faster, less expensive, and easier manner. Our goal is to promote decarbonization to help limit the effects that climate change has on the planet. And what we do through decarbonization, electrification, moving away from fossil fuels to clean energy sources is really what Span's mission is, to really promote electrification for everybody out there.
So right now, I don't know, I'm going to be in this house for a long time. And the last house I bought, I was only in for a year, and I bought a full $70,000 Tesla.
Yep.
I did 4 power walls, a 17 kilowatt, kilowatt hour system. Yeah. And I don't know that I'm going to do that to this house because I don't know I'm going to be here forever. But is this panel worth it without solar?
Yes.
So what are the sort of pros and cons of panel alone versus solar?
Yeah, so the major pros towards Span and an electric only, which your home is here, you don't have solar, you don't have storage, is what we can do from eliminating the need to do utility service upgrades as you continue to electrify. So big example is, there's a lot of homes out there that have 100 amp service in their homes. So 100 amp electrical service, typically older homes, and at that point the electrical panel is pretty packed full and they don't have a lot of capacity left in the panel. With Span, let's say you want to add an EV charger. You talk about having a Tesla, and in that scenario, you want to add an EV charger, but if your house is at capacity with all the level loads that you have, you're limited to 2 options. You add an EV charger and derate it. So let's say it comes with a standard level 2 48 amp charge. You don't have that 48 amps available. Your one option is to derate the EV charger down to 15, 20 amps, whatever may be available. At that point, it's a poor experience for a homeowner.
You're talking about a hole, right? A hole in the panel?
Well, just the available capacity to charge. So let's so let's say you land a 60 amp breaker, whatever required for the EV charger, but the capacity of the panel is already kind of maxed out. So you only have a limited amount of amps available to put towards an EV charger. So the one option, derating.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so if you had an old school panel, you would just put a 20 amp circuit in, and that's all it's going to give.
Correct, and it's a poor experience for a homeowner, whether it's a new to them EV or they're buying a brand new EV, which can be relatively expensive. Yes. And typically the car salesperson isn't going to tell you and make sure you have all this amperage available.
Right.
So what Span can do is, the other option is to pull in new utility service. So you bring in another 50, 100 amps from the utility, extremely expensive, takes a long time, and at the end of the day, you're still stuck with the traditional dumb electrical panel.
Yeah.
What Span offers the ability to do is kind of shed that load to where you replace Span with from your traditional electrical panel.
Yep.
And that EV charger, you can make sure it can get a full level 2 charge at all times because of how we can shed loads throughout the house.
Oh, okay.
So in that scenario, let's say it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a lot of stuff on in the home, and you just don't have the amperage to charge your EV at that time. However, at nighttime, a lot of things turn off. You have that amperage to charge your EV, so you can get a full level 2 charge out of that. Let's say it's still charging come morning time. You get up, if you have a tankless electric water heater in the house, that start going. You have an induction cooktop, and a lot of loads start to come on. What SPAN will do is actually pause that EV charger while you're using these other electrical appliances.
I didn't even think about that.
And once those appliances are turned off or no longer used, we can return the power to the EV charger.
And I don't have to do that. Is there something I need to do manual in the app for that to happen?
Through the setup process, you designate that as the load that will shed if other loads are on. So it's not a manual process every time you do it. It's when you have the install, you go to that circuit, you designate that circuit as the EV charger that will shed in the event that other loads are on. And that's with any third-party EV charger. So SPAN, we do have our own EV charger coming out hopefully later next month. And what that will do, instead of pausing that load, we can actually dynamically shed that load. So let's say you have a full 48 amp charge going on, but you have an electrical appliance that comes on that exceeds the capacity of the panel. If that load only leaves us with 40 amps of charge or 30 amps, we will dynamically shed down to 30, 40, 25 amps. Whereas with a third-party EV charger, we just pause that load until the other appliances go off.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't even think about that. So that's where the smart panel comes in, where you start to get some. I don't have as much of an issue. This is a house was built in 2020.
Understand. Yes.
The house is a 400. There's a 200 amp service here. There's another 200 amp service in the master. So I don't have that problem, but many people do.
Yeah. So aside from having those problems, SPAN itself as an energy management system as well gives you the ability to monitor and control every circuit. And you talked about this in your first video. And what we hope that does is gives people the information that they can use to make smart choices about how they use energy in the home. So let's say you have a high utility bill and you wonder what's going on. You can pull up historical data in that app to see exactly what used the most amount of power last month, the previous month.
Stats, right?
Exactly. And you can pull up a whole house, so you can get a whole home view and get an idea of what top 5 or 6 circuits were consumed in a day, a week, a month, or even going back to a whole year. So we keep all that data in the app from the time SPAN was installed. So 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you can always look back and see how circuits have performed and how you've used your energy in your home. And if for some reason you start to get increasing energy bills, you can kind of look at your historical data and say, I'm using a lot more of my HVAC circuit, or this other circuit here. Let's say you bring on an EV charger. You can see that the EV charger may have consumed more energy in the house, and that's why your power bill is higher. So, but with all that information, the point of it is to let a homeowner know exactly how you're using electricity in your home, and hopefully make some wise choices to limit the amount of energy usage.
So let's say, Mike, can you zoom in on this here? Can you get me? So let's say, so here's my circuits. I have my Tesla charger off, right? And so let's say, what would I have needed to do if this was a 100 amp panel to allow the system to adjust?
It would be done in the setup app, so we can't do it directly from here. So it's part of the setup process.
Oh, your installer would make that choice to divert.
Yes.
You know, that if they didn't need to do this here because I had enough power. Right?
Yeah.
So then in here, installation-wise, so I'm sure pricing will change over time, but what I paid, the panel was $37.50. So that's the cost of the panel, and then, the process was super seamless. I didn't have to do anything. I talked to the lady on the phone, right? I talked to the lady on the phone, and she said it was like $2,700 for something for the electrician to come do this all day. So right now there's a flat rate. I'm sure that flat rate adjusts depending on where you are in the country. But there's a flat rate that she told me what the pricing was, because I was getting 2 panels. They gave me a slight discount for the 2. But basically everything was seamless. I submitted the application online. I got a contact from one of the salespeople. We set up a Zoom call. She asked me what I was trying to do. I sent her some photos. I uploaded the photos to the app to her. I think she sent me a form, and I uploaded the photos to it. Then we had our Zoom call and discussed, what was I trying to accomplish? And I said one of the issues I had was I didn't have enough room to fit all the circuits that I had, because I've actually added some since. And then they pulled the permits. Once the permits were pulled, the electrician came out, take a look at the area. He scheduled it, and I never even saw it. Like, I didn't have to do anything. So it was done, and the power was down for maybe 4 hours during the day. I wasn't even here.
Yeah, and that's kind of a misconception about SPAN is it does a lot, so there's sometimes confusion about how much is involved in the install process, and SPAN installs just like any traditional electrical panel. It shouldn't take you much longer. The install process from an electrician standpoint, there's a little more work to be done in terms of when they are done finishing the panel through the commissioning process, where they name how you have all your circuits named here, where you name the circuit, you label the amperage of the breaker, put some information in, like if your Tesla EV charger
Update
at that point,
and all that stuff.
Yeah, so that's all done there, but there's also a couple things that speed up the process for electricians as well. Typically when they do a new load center, they walk around the house, they're on the phone with somebody else saying, hey, is this really the bedroom breaker? With SPAN, kind of a neat experience for an electrician, a solar installer with the homeowner to walk through the house at that point and just click circuits on and off from their phone. You see it happen in the house, so it's not a manual back and forth between two people here or there. So there's some things that take a little bit longer, then there's other steps from the install standpoint that speed up the install a little bit.
The other thing that really helped me, I was out of room, right? And so we have 32 available slots.
Correct.
And so what he was able to do was, you can see here, I have a lot of tandems. So I have not just 15 amp tandems, but I've got some 50 amp tandems. So he was able to save me. I have 2 empty slots. And like I said, I've added like 4 circuits since. And so it actually freed up from where I was. I was completely full. It freed up, a good 4 or 5 slots that made it available, that I had more room to fit things, because I was doing like the bike and doing the overhead attic ladders and stuff like that I didn't have before.
Yeah, so that's kind of a unique feature with our panel as well. Is through our certification process, there's a number of standard kind of off-the-shelf breakers that can be used in our panel. So we do not manufacture breakers. You don't use smart breakers in our panel. All the intelligence, so GE, Eaton, Siemens, Square D, there's certain models within all those brands that we are compatible with. It comes standard with the 200 amp Square D QO main pre-installed, but all the intelligence is built into our backplate from the computer, the relays, all the monitoring controls. So we use standard off-the-shelf breakers. There is 32 slots. You can use tandems, tris, quads. So it really kind of agnostic when it comes to breaker compatibility, which makes it nice for installers in the field that if there is a shortage of one brand, chances are there's another one available that they can do an install with.
Do they have to choose one and stick to it, or can you do more?
Best practices is if you're going to load it with GE, use all GE. Now we are certified for all these different ones, but
I think some of these were new, but most of these were my original. They're going to reuse those. We came in and reuse those things. So a couple of things to note. When I go, let's just say I wanted to go and I was going to turn off. So my Tesla charger is off. My Tesla charger is labeled here, which I love, is 28 and 30. So I have a 50 amp here. I don't know why we didn't do it. Why didn't we do a 60? I don't know. Anyway, we have a 50 amp here. I think Mike might have done a 50 because I think we ran number 8 wire, not number 6 or something like that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So it's off, but my breaker's still on. So it's digitally off, but physically on.
Yes.
And so explain how does that work? So if I turned it on, it doesn't actually turn the breaker.
Yes, so behind every breaker, every circuit as we call it, is a relay. So when we are turning circuits on and off, we're essentially opening and closing relays behind every breaker.
Gotcha. So if I turn it on,
you hear the click. It's the breaker was already on, you hear the relay close, so you now have a functioning circuit. If the circuit is on and you go to turn it off, it will give you a warning to say if you're doing electrical work on this circuit, Best practice is still flip the actual breaker just to prevent potential electrocution. But in terms of what we do with load shedding, turning circuits on and off remotely, we're not actually flipping the breaker. We are opening and closing those relays, and that's kind of a benefit to homeowners when some of the smart breaker systems out there, when you turn the breaker off, it is actually flipping that breaker. You cannot turn it back on remotely. It's a manual process where you go out and you actually have to push the breaker back on. Okay. So let's say you are out of town and there's certain circuits you want to turn off in the home, but you will want them back on before you return home. Yep. That's where SPAN is so great, where you have that on-off functionality. Yep. All remotely versus some of the competitive technology out there where you can turn it off remotely, but you have to physically be there to turn it back on.
You know what's so cool? I have these fans up here and I haven't put a switch on them because we're going to do some Lutron radio raw. Okay. We're going to do a wireless system. And so the fans, the guys were in here loading up. So a bunch of my guys were loading up the cabinets and it was hot in here. So they wanted to turn the fans on. And I had the circuit off, and I was in a different state. And Tommy texted me, "Hey, how do I turn these fans on?" And I just hit the circuit, turn it on, fans kicked on. And so, if this, like you were saying, so if this circuit is off, I can't go into the app and turn it on.
You cannot.
So I have to so if there's an actual trip, so there's a couple of things to check when you're, if you had an issue, you check the app. If the app isn't indicating anything, you still want to come check the circuit.
Exactly.
So that's something that I noticed when I was messing around here. So right now the relay is on, but the circuit is off.
Correct.
So I wonder if if I do the app here, will it show the breaker off? Yeah, so the relay is on, so it's still going to show. It shows this on. So I come back here, turn the circuit on now. Because I don't have a Tesla at the moment, I've just turned this on. It asks you for your safety. Are you sure you're not doing any electrical work? You say understand, and it clicks and turns the circuit off.
Yeah, and if you were to have that off and it's showing on and you go to charge your EV, you won't see a charge there, and you're kind of thinking, why isn't this charging? It's because the breaker is actually off.
So then you have the option you can go rename everything. So this is the main reason I bought this, which is a bit ridiculous. But I wanted this. This fancy little thing because Mr. Perry, my electrician, is a scribble hand,
a bunch of things stuck on here, making it look ugly.
Right. And then I asked him, "Hey, can you make it pretty?" And then he came in and just kind of did some goofy stuff. And I'm like, no, I want. So the reason I bought this was because of all the scribble.
Yes.
And so I got rid of the scribble. I have a template for this, or you can just scan the QR code here and you can just go, and just print it out.
Yep.
You print it out. I have it saved, so I know what all these circuits are. So if I added something to 29, I just go and reprint. Slide this thing out.
Or, as you said, change something on one of the other circuits. Again, back to the aesthetic standpoint, you can see we have the nice LED lighting in here. We want to make sure the panel looks good on the outside and on the inside. So not having a bunch of labels printed here, magic marker. We have this nice sheet up here that you can hang.
So, and then it also locks in nicely. It's super stout, super sturdy. You have the very Tesla-looking style or design.
Very much so.
If you had power walls, it would all match.
It looks very good paired with them.
This is driving me crazy. I gotta get this off. But I think the aesthetics of it, especially when it's in a prominent location, like in fancy pressure washing setup here. It's super appealing to me.
Or scenarios, there's a lot of electrical panels that are installed outdoors or exterior walls, especially Hawaii. A lot of them are out there. So SPAN is a NEMA 3R rated enclosure, which means it can be installed indoor, outdoors. Main thing, we don't want irrigation spraying up at the bottom of it. But we do have a lot of panels installed exterior. So when you do have an exterior application, especially on a nicer home, instead of having that ugly electrical panel out there, you can have something that's nice looking.
That's another cool thing, because I actually had moved my panel at my last house outside. And just because I didn't want to see it. I didn't have enough room in the garage. I didn't have a wall for it. It cost me a bunch of money to run on the circuit. So here I didn't do that. So what else would people need to know about so let's say I did add solar. Let's say I did Tesla. I did Tesla solar. What would change from my setup here? Would I notice anything different?
Not a whole lot. From the app side, you would. So when you go to that kind of landing page, the main page of the app, you won't see, you see your grid production. So you have your grid production. If you had solar and storage, you'd see the sun lit up and the battery lit up.
Okay.
And you see the power flow here showing energy coming from the grid to your span. With solar, let's say you are producing excess solar and pushing back to the grid or pushing to your battery, you'll see those power flows go opposite ways. And then as you continue to scroll down, you'll see your usage there, but you'll also see some statistics on, if you were to go off grid, if the power goes down and you go into a battery backup mode, you'll see statistics on how much time you have left. And that's a really unique feature in span. Just like you look at your phone, let's say you have a 45% charge left. You don't know what that really means depending on what you're going to use. So in span, instead of looking at, let's say, Tesla's app or Enphase or SolarEdge and saying I have 40% battery left, we know how these circuits perform and how much energy is used from each of these circuits and what that equates to in reducing battery runtime. So we can tell a homeowner exactly how much time, based upon how they have their circuit set up, that they will have for battery runtime. The unique thing with span is what we do from automatic load shedding. So let's say you were to do solar and Tesla batteries. What the installer will do will work with you to bucket all your circuits into a must-have, nice-to-have, or non-essential. What happens when you go off-grid, the battery automatically kicks on, span recognizes that you're in an off-grid event, and all the circuits you bucketed in that you don't need will automatically shed. Okay. Your nice-to-have loads, when the battery gets to 50%, those will automatically turn off to where you're only running your must-have loads. So what span does is eliminates the needs for a critical loads panel with solar and storage installs. And there's a lot of features, but kind of unique features built into that in terms of what you have as your must-have loads. You can move those around at any time. So it's a fully customizable critical loads panel at any time, giving you access to all your circuits in an off-grid event. Whereas if you were to do a traditional electrical panel and a critical loads panel, in an off-grid event, you are only limited to those loads you have in the critical loads panel, which are 6, 8, 10 loads maybe. And if you ever want to change those, it's pretty labor intensive and expensive to pull the circuits out of that critical loads panel, back into your main panel, pull something out of the main, back into the critical loads. So we really streamline the install process with solar and storage because you have all your circuits available to you at any time in a backup event, and you're not limited to just a critical loads panel.
So if I added it, I wouldn't need to pull any circuits out of this panel.
Nope.
That's awesome, because they had to do that.
Yeah.
Pull all the critical. Is it possible to run like an entire, I want to run my whole house? Can't you do that?
That is dependent on the size of the storage systems. So if you don't have you have a large home here, you have a lot of appliances in there, you do, let's say, a single battery, chances are you're not powering the whole home, especially depending on the size of your air conditioning systems, heat pumps. So sometimes it is dependent on the size of the batteries that you have. But with our technology, we give a lot of information to the homeowner that if they were to turn off this specific load, how many hours or minutes in runtime that they will gain.
Increase.
So we state that we can extend the runtime of batteries by about 40%. So if there is a scenario where somebody wants to back up their whole home but needs 5 batteries and it becomes a cost point issue there, could potentially get by with 2 or 3 batteries plus span and use our function and features to make sure you get that runtime that you want out of it. Again, in an off-grid or nighttime event before solar's producing the next day.
The thing I'm struggling with in this house to not do, there's no icing, there's no closed cell foam. This wasn't a well-built home. This was a builder spec. Yeah. And I probably won't be here for very long. So I'm struggling with I want to do it, I want to go solar, I want to add power walls, I want to go off grid. I'd love to add a generator as well. So I think the magic, what's your take, what's Span's take on the supplementation of a sort of a propane or gas powered generator to supplement a solar system?
So if used in conjunction, let's go back to the Tesla example. If you were to do solar plus power walls, Tesla actually has a protocol for having power walls plus a generator. Okay. And really at that point, it's all the generator is a standalone from the Tesla or Powerwall standpoint.
But there's just a transfer switch,
yes,
right?
So we're still receiving the information from the battery saying this is the state of charge and it's in an off-grid event. Okay. We just recently opened up the functionality or the compatibility for us to use with generators directly. It's a little bit of a different install where it has to be span, transfer switch, then generator. So, the generator is not landing directly in span. You have the transfer switch in between. With those applications, as of today, it's not as seamless when you do kick over to an off-grid event. We don't have that load shed functionality built in as of yet. Fortunately, because all of the panels are connected to the internet or have to be connected to the internet per our warranty, is when that feature and functionality does come out, we simply push out a software update and everyone has it available.
We won't have to do any hardware switching or changing.
Correct.
Like that. So I get a Generac, let's say I get a 22 kilowatt hour generator for this house. They're going to put the transfer switch probably near the main, where the service comes in off the street. Nothing changes for this.
No, you'd have that transfer switch in between. So when whether it's an automatic or manual, when it does flip, this now knows that it's the power, or it doesn't know the power is now coming from generator source.
Gotcha.
But it's a little bit more of a manual process from the homeowner standpoint, where you can look at your app, you see all your circuits that are on, you can manually start to turn circuits off.
Gotcha.
Whereas on the solar and storage standpoint, it's a little more seamless, or much more seamless, where it just automatically starts to set certain loads.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I've been thinking about the value, the return on investment. Does that, do I get a return on that when I sell the home? Did I get that? I think I got that money back when I sold my last house, even though I only had it for a year. So I bought a $70,000 Tesla system that I had for a year. Did I get $70,000 more for the house because of that? I don't know.
We see that the investment of solar and storage, typically there is a return on it. There's a lot of information out there. We have some stuff on our website of people stating that, real estate agent told me I could sell my house for this much more because I've had span solar and storage. But as you look at, energy costs continue to rise, and kind of the long-term benefits of having solar and storage and really limiting your grid usage, there's much more payback there.
And the beauty also for us in Florida is if we do have an event, hurricane comes through, power's out, I may not be able to power the entire house the whole time, but if I had a combination of propane generator and, it could be really, you could be running air conditioning, watching Netflix, doing whatever you want to do.
And the nice part of span, going back to what you can do just from your phone and turning loads on and off, is let's say you don't have a battery setup that could power the whole home, but you want your kitchen to be on and your living room in the afternoon when you're cooking dinner, but later at night everyone goes to their bedrooms and you don't need the garage, the outdoor stuff on. You just simply turn those things off from the app and it's funny, conserve that battery runtime.
About 5 years ago, we had a hurricane come through and we were out of power for 5 days.
Is that Irma?
And I think so.
Yeah.
And we didn't fill up our gas tank, or we had a 1,000-gallon tank and a 35 kilowatt hour generator, so just sucking power.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is I would just, I would try to manage temperature, try to keep the house below 78.
Yeah.
And so I would go turn it on, let it run for an hour or so, and then turn it off. So I was manually going out and turning, because basically I had a Ford V6 out in my backyard, and the muffler was bad. We didn't know that, and so you could hear it from 3-4 streets away. But with this, I could just manage. Okay, I don't need this. I don't need that. I don't need this.
Exactly.
You could turn off the garage.
And what we typically see is a lot of generators or modern generators. You can see the fuel that's left in them. So you can look at the generator app. I have half full fuel tank, and then use the span app to go ahead and manage those loads to make sure you can conserve as much time runtime on that.
Yeah, but if I build a house, I would do generator, span, and solar. Do all three, and then you'd be covered. And then maybe even do some water reclamation. That could be cool too. Just be a true practice what you preach sort of thing, and really take yourself off grid. Even in a modern city neighborhood, you could take yourself off.
Exactly.
What else do we need to know? Is this pricing? Do you expect pricing to change? We're in the summer of 2022 right now. We're making this video. Do you have any guidance on that?
We're hopeful. This is our main hardware product as of today. As you can imagine, with what our mission and is what we're trying to do, that we have a product hardware roadmap, and we're continuing to roll out new technology, both from a software and hardware standpoint. With technology as it evolves and as our production goes up, our hopes is that span becomes less expensive over time. So that's our goal. Supply chain constraints and several other things right now, I think, are limiting pretty much every industry to lower their prices. But our goal in terms of enabling electrification for everyone, we do want to have products that are affordable to everyone as well. So the intent is that the product price comes down over time.
What's the delta? I mean, I'm sure you guys have guidance on this. So let's say I was going to buy a square D panel. What's a square D panel cost? Roughly.
The price difference, hardware, our panel for a traditional 200 amp, 32 space panel, you're looking at about 8 times more for the span panel from a product cost.
$700-800 for 3250, so we're $500 for a panel, regular panel.
Yeah. So and with the install, you're pretty much always looking at what the product cost difference is, because the install process, as I said, at the end of the day, very similar. Shouldn't take much more time to install span versus traditional.
But there are
panel.
span certified electricians that you guys have all over the country.
Yeah, so to install our products, you have to become a span certified installer. We don't let just anybody install our products. We have a process to make sure they get properly trained. They sign an agreement that says span will be installed in accordance with our installation manual and what we recommend. You're not going to load stuff in here that you shouldn't. So while somebody could get their hands on a span product and install it, that could happen, but all the commissioning, the functionality, everything virtually from the app has to be done by a span certified installer through their installer app. It's a very easy process for them. They log into it, they scan this QR code, and it's a very intuitive kind of step-by-step install. What type of system is it? Do you have solar? Do you have storage? What's the amperage of the breakers? What do you name them? So yes, span does need to be installed by one of our certified installers, and we have thousands of them throughout the country.
Is there any difference between new and retrofit? So retrofit construction versus new? I mean, do you need to do anything special if you were building a new house?
Not necessarily. Again, as long as all the loads are landing there. For new installers, we have a project design resource where they could submit information to us, and our project design team will work hand in hand with that installer to make sure their initial installs go really well. Thousands of these are installed. We've dealt with a lot of customers, and we've kind of learned what best practices are. And because you have this scenario, you should do this. Or our design team will say, hey, I see you guys are doing this with your install. Our recommendation is to do this. It'll be an easier, more seamless install. So we do have the project design resources where some people see this, and back to my earlier comment, that think it's just a very complex system. At the end of the day, an install is just like any other electrical panel. We want to make sure that our new installers especially are comfortable doing the installs.
I would suspect also, because the guys that are installing these, the electrician that you're hiring, that you guys are placing, right? So what happened with me, I didn't pick, they just placed a certified installer. My wager is those guys are probably best of the best, because they're cutting edge, they're chasing that they had to chase you down, right?
Yes, so they've done a lot of installs, so we don't have a whole lot of them that are doing our kind of service agreement work that have it's their first install. Span, we've only had a product on the market 2.5-3 years now, but it's really blown up throughout the industry in terms of what the technology
what I'm saying is the guys that have chosen to become certified were probably already great electricians to begin with.
Yes, if you look at their website, typically they are offering the latest technology. So we have the electricians, we have tech integrators, and then we have the solar and storage installers. And if you look at any of their websites, they're typically offering the latest, greatest technology.
These are the guys really that are, they're educating themselves. They're probably, it's a microcosm, right? So they're probably terminating wires better. They're mounting, boxes straight and things.
See how clean this install is. You typically don't have this clean of an electrical panel with install.
Your local, goofball.
Exactly, yeah.
So, what else would people need to know about this? I mean, it's really pretty simple. You have the app. I never even saw the guy. I was here, I was doing something, I was out of town or something like that. I came home. The only thing we had to do was I had to do a couple of circuit resets on the app, because a couple of the devices didn't reset in time, because I think the firmware was still downloading when he left. But the guy, it was awesome. He He's like, it was like Sunday. He's like, you need me to come there? I'm like, no, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And we got it to work just over the phone. But the support was really great.
Yeah, and even was that your contractor?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so even our tech support, we have a full tech support team that if there is any issues can kind of walk you through everything. Because the panels are connected to the internet, we can push firmware, software updates out to rectify if there's any type of little issues going on. And I'd say just look out for Span in terms of what we're going to be doing as a company. Our hardware roadmap, what we can talk about now is the EV charger. I think it's going to kind of be a game changer for the EV charging space as this was for the electrical panel space.
How is that EV charger going to work for? It's just going to have different NEMA type adapters for depending on the car?
No, so it's your standard adapter that's on it. And if you do have a Tesla has their own adapter. So Tesla's one of the only cars that has their own kind of plug.
Yeah.
So our housing, you'd put that adapter on there and you just leave the plug in our housing. So when you take it off, go ahead and charge the car or plug the car in.
Would there be any disadvantage of that? I mean, versus using the OE Tesla charger? I mean.
The main disadvantage in terms of what our technology does is with Tesla's charger, if you do get into a scenario where you don't have the amperage available and we'd have to pause that load, whereas with Span Drive, our EV charger, we can dynamically shed and throttle that load down to where you're still always charging at some capacity.
Yeah.
And as those loads in the house that cause it to diminish are turned off, we return full power to that EV charger.
Gotcha.
So you can get a
So when I get a Rivian, then Rivian might have their own little adapter or not.
Potentially, yeah.
I have a Rivian, what is it, the R1S, the SUV on order.
I've had the Ford Lightning on order since October and haven't heard much about it yet.
Yeah, Rivian, I've had it on order for at least a year. And so the estimated deliveries are 2024.
Yeah, I saw the first one in person on Howard Franklin in Tampa not too long ago. Surprised to see it out there. Yeah.
So we ordered the SUV. We'll see if that comes. Well, I think those are all the questions I have, and it's really that simple. I'm looking to make this some big, long, drawn-out video, but you go on to Span's site, you fill out the application, they contact you, and then the process just happens seamlessly.
Yeah, so we have a couple different ways in terms of sourcing or procuring Span. We do have a lot of electricians and solar installers that are actively selling. They have Span listed on their website. They're certified installers. They kind of sell, scope, install their own jobs, but then we have the other method that you went through where you can go to our website, click Get Span, fill out information. We have a team inside from sales, project deployments, tech support that really, as you said, you sent them some pictures. We scope the job. We work with our local certified installers to get it installed for you.
So you're looking at somewhere around $6,000, roughly, give or take, depending on the area.
Yeah, market dependent. You get into the West Coast of the U.S. could be a little more expensive. Miami compared to Tampa could be a little different.
But the actual box right now is $3,750, I think. I think that's what it was.
So our website now is $4,500 is our MSRP.
Okay.
We did have a pricing increase.
Okay, so they're $4,500 now, and then you're going to spend somewhere around a couple $2,000 to do the installation, depending on where you're at.
Yeah,
might be cheaper in Nebraska than it is in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for people to have the opportunity to do this kind of thing. I really enjoy it. At first, I just thought, now I got a pretty box, but I think that where the real value will come in is if I start doing generators, solar, things like that, and I start having, power outages.
Yeah, your scenario is a little unique here where you do have 400 amp service, you have 2 panels, this one's not at capacity, it sounds like your other one's not.
Close,
so you have a lot of capacity that could still be loaded in them. Some older homes that have maybe not as much utility service.
Some real benefit.
There's a significant amount of benefit there in terms of what we can do from avoiding utility service upgrades, because again, at the end of the day, you pull in another 100 amps of power and use a traditional electrical panel, you're still set with a dumb electrical panel. You have 0 features outside of your breakers, and that's where Span really offers the benefits.
Awesome. Well, how would people reach out? Just the best thing to do is go to the website?
Yeah, span.io. We have all the information on there. We have all the product resources. We have some nice videos. It's a new website just redesigned a couple months ago. So really everything you could need is listed on our website.
I think I'd gotten like an Instagram ad or something that I clicked on. I'm like, this would be kind of cool. I hate this stupid panel I have here. I got to figure something out because I don't have enough space anyway. And then I filled it out, and then was like, man, I don't really want to spend that much money on a panel, but I do want to make this pretty, and so I just made it happen, just did it.
Yeah, and again, aesthetics, one thing, the feature set is so robust, and understanding what span can do for a homeowner. You have a lot of information on our website to see how they can benefit them.
And then this would have been super useful, having the LED light on the outside on my last house,
Yes.
because I was always out there in the dark trying to hold the camera.
Oh, yeah.
So not as useful in my garage, but super, super useful in, and especially if you had solar, because then if the power was out.
Well, nice too. If you did have solar storage or generator in your backup, you turn your garage lighting off.
Yeah.
Could be dark in here where you open the panel, and it's still easy to see.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming out.
Appreciate
your time.
it.
Yeah, this
Thanks
is
for
awesome.
having me.
Thank you, guys.